The potential of a Warhammer 40k live-action show with Henry Cavill spearheading the entire operation has the ability to rival something like Game of Thrones, and uniquely position itself as the new superior science fiction epic of our time, but that all relies on a single thing. If, and I mean if, it's done right. Warhammer 40k has been in development for years now at Amazon with Henry Cavill attached. We finally got some new updates, and I want to even go back and look at The Witcher Netflix and see how that's going post Henry Cavill as well, and just ask the question, where is modern media going these days? And are they finally learning from their mistakes? Well, as Yahoo showed here, Henry Cavill confirms the Amazon live-action series is still happening, and the updates are exciting. One of the newer developments confirmed as seen here is that the Warhammer 40k universe will be creating an animated series about the Death Watch. It will be based on the animated short you might have seen with Amazon's Secret Level series, which was spearheaded by David Wilson, who directed that original Secret Level short based on Warhammer. I can't show anything from that episode due to copyright issues, but if you saw the short, you'd know how awesome it was. It captured the brutality of Warhammer very well, and the idea of an entire animated series done in this style has the potential to be really amazing. Henry Cavill confirmed it will also be animated fully by Blur Studio, which has also the original people that did the Secret Level short in the first place. And if you know the name Blur, yeah, they're the ones that also did all the Halo animated scenes in the anniversary editions of those games too. Again, really cool idea with tons of potential. The second season of Secret Level, which should be coming this year I think to Amazon, is also going to have another Warhammer themed episode, but it will be set in the Age of Sigmar instead, so looking forward to that too, I guess. Wilson, who directed that episode of Secret Level in the first season, confirms as seen here that he's all in on delivering an amazing Warhammer animated series that's going to rival the greats. And again, this is all happening because Henry Cavill is overseeing everything. He's an executive producer, if you didn't know, for the entire project. Henry's got final say on pretty much almost everything going on with this live action, and now even animated universe. But the news gets better. Henry Cavill also confirmed himself that Mike Flanagan, who wrote the upcoming DC movie Clayface and has done other horror shows like The Haunting of Hill House, Midnight Mass, and adaptations like Gerald's Game, all horror themed of course, and he's now officially writing the Warhammer 40k live action TV show, which is supposed to be like the main thing of course, where Henry Cavill himself will also star in as the lead character. PC Gamer confirmed it here. That yeah, Mike Flanagan and Henry Cavill are working together. However, currently no one knows who Henry is still playing, but since he's keeping it a secret, it's likely someone who already exists to some capacity in the lore if I had to guess. Otherwise, why would he hide who he's playing if it wasn't a new character, right? I guess let me know who you think he is playing, but it's happening, and Steam is picking up now finally. Henry confirmed himself on Instagram as seen here that yes, he's in the show obviously. They made considerable advances in the story of what they want to tell, and he will 100% play the lead character in the series. I think personally getting Mike Flanagan of all people involved is a great idea because like I said, the guy is well versed in horror. And personally, the more you look at Warhammer's world and what could be done there, especially with say the warp, you know, the realm of chaos itself, I mean, this kind of writes itself pretty much. It's become clear to me that one of the last genres that still feels unique is horror overall, and horror leads itself to be captivating because of what it represents. And I think combining that with Warhammer, yeah, that makes a natural fit. Like I said before, I think this entire project with Henry Cavill and more has the potential to become, and I'm not kidding, the new Star Wars. Obviously, Star Wars right now is in the dumps, as we all know. No one really cares about what's going on there because they ruined it. Warhammer uniquely exists as the premier science fiction epic that hasn't been adapted yet, that can swallow up the massive void that was left behind by pretty much, well, every single science fiction project not named Dune that has like squandered its potential. I think Dune's the only one that's still doing well. With Star Wars dead pretty much, Mass Effect lost to the ether seemingly, and God knows what's going on with anything else, they could deliver a slam dunk here. And in the wake of everyone being sick of modern audience writing, if Henry Cavill can ensure his series completely avoids the pitfalls of modernity, like so many have before it, this could be an all-time great franchise in terms of live action, a science fiction Game of Thrones if you will. Henry Cavill said more to ensure fans all is going well, as it reads here. As the fans will know, it's an absolute monster to wrestle, but Mike Flanagan's extraordinary talents are helping it take form wonderfully. As a combined force and with the good folks at Games Workshop, we are all working tirelessly to bring you the best, most Warhammer universe that you could possibly imagine. This tells me that Warhammer is going to be horror-induced, very mature, and hopefully gritty, which if that ends up happening, oh yeah, hell yeah, brother. Inject it into my veins, please and thank you very much. I do think what the Warhammer series represents above all, though, is a complete reset of what pop culture should be going for, if I'm being honest. The truth is, nobody wants to watch any show that treats its source material like it's a plague or be embarrassed of it rather than something that it should adhere to and be proud of. A great example of what not to do, is The Witcher on Netflix, a terrible adaptation of what should have been amazing but wasn't. The Witcher on Netflix, before it released, it had the potential to be the next Game of Thrones. It really could have been that. It had everything that a series would need to create a compelling world that would be rife with conflict and intrigue for many seasons to come. But The Witcher Netflix fell to modernity. It ruined itself because the writers refused to listen to not just the fans, but Henry Cavill himself. I don't think people remember just how big The Witcher Netflix was when it first premiered. It reached record numbers, right? It blew up in views all because of Henry Cavill obviously playing Geralt of Rivia. Even the creator of The Witcher himself, Andrzej Sapkowski, told the press that Henry Cavill, in his mind, was the definitive version of how Andrzej envisioned Geralt to look and even sound like in live action. So Netflix had nothing but goodwill with The Witcher coming into the series. They had the potential to upheave both Game of Thrones and stuff like Lord of the Rings, which are IPs owned by their rivals at Warner and Amazon respectively. Yet what did they do with it? Absolutely nothing. They squandered it all, they hated their fan bases, and decided The Witcher was not a story worth telling the way that it was written. Plus, they added a bunch of unneeded diversity that made no sense in that world, given that The Witcher was based on Slavic folklore and its people, which is Eastern Europe. If you can't tell, I'm still mad about The Witcher, but it proves how poorly something can be made, where it ruins all forward momentum. Because the writers involved were complete idiots who just hated their fan bases, man. Let's say it how it is. But what Warhammer represents, at least, is both an opportunity to make things right or a repeat of what's come before. And I really hope that's not what happens, because the potential here is off the charts. But then again, so was it with The Witcher, and we saw how that all turned out. But Warhammer isn't just some story, right? It's a mythology. It has thousands of years of written history, factions all over, and countless characters. Plus, it deals with religion and even things like demons too. It's a universe where humanity's greatest achievement is also one of its greatest nightmares, and that is precisely why Henry Cavill being here involved with it matters. Because if this is done right, like Henry is saying in the press releases that you saw, he will protect the source material, but will that be enough? Because Henry has been here before, right? Back when he was starting up work on The Witcher, not only did Henry play the games, he read the books too. In an interview around 2019, I could be wrong though, but Henry Cavill explained that he was only interested in doing The Witcher show as long as the show stayed as true to the lore as possible. Because for me, what that told me was that Henry Cavill believed it was his responsibility to not try to reinvent Geralt for a modern audience. No, Henry instead wanted to protect Geralt as the character from Hollywood itself. That is likely why he took the role of the White Wolf Witcher, because in the hands of really anyone else, it would be ruined until it was unrecognizable. So the fact that a perfect situation like that ended up where you had an A-list actor who loved the source material, and then what happened, you get what you tolerate, I guess. Even Screen Rant of all places, as seen here, says that the only way for Warhammer to avoid what happened to Witcher is to allow for true adaptation work to happen with none of the modernity that we've come to resent. It's not like people are against adaptations having interpretation, right? That is expected. We understood that stuff in the books for Witcher would be changed somewhat. But other times the problem was that a lot of the time adaptations stopped being about translating what's even in the book in the first place. And instead it becomes very quickly about replacing it, right? A great example of this is how in the Netflix series, how they treated Eskel, right? One of the Witchers of Kaer Morhen. If you played the games, read the books, you know Eskel. He's also in The Witcher 3, of course, helps Geralt and Yennefer protect Ciri from the Wild Hunt. Yet in the Netflix show, Eskel is unceremoniously axed and dies in season 2 when he gets infected by a Leshen of all things. It completely upends the entire story of Eskel and makes the game's stories more problematic and, well, not make sense at all, obviously. Although, of course, Andrzej Sapkowski, the creator of Witcher, considers the game's stories by CD Projekt Red to be mostly alternative versions of his work. Non-canon to a point, but it still remains that what happened to Eskel was a prime example of how modern audience writing ruins everything that it touches. As Screen Rant says it here, we should expect Warhammer to be more authentic thanks to Henry Cavill being executive producer, although in Warhammer's case, the state of that universe does allow for really any sort of story to be told, but that's not really the issue here. But the fact of the matter is there are core fundamental concepts everyone should adhere to when it comes to, say, Warhammer's world. Like, for example, the Emperor is basically a husk on a throne. If they magically write something post the Horus Heresy where obviously the Emperor was already mortally wounded by Horus, but suddenly pretended that actually no, the Emperor's totally fine, yeah, that would anger everybody. Same goes with female Adeptus Custodes. I don't think Henry Cavill and Mike Flanagan should even entertain the idea idea of that faction having women in it, if they also want to avoid controversy, which would likely be a good idea not to. Essentially, if you want to avoid any possible pitfalls and maximize your engagement with viewers, you gotta not annoy them. You know what I'm saying? TV shows tend to forget this more often than not, and always find new ways to make people really angry. The Witcher failed because it was an accumulation of changes that overwhelmed the whole thing. The alteration of characters, creation of new material that nobody asked for, and the oversimplification of complicated storylines, mostly because Netflix creates content meant for people who don't actually watch TV, and I'm not kidding. And by the way, Amazon is to blame for this sort of thing too, which they're doing Warhammer, obviously. So this is relevant, okay? The term that explains this is usually called casual viewing, as TheGuardian.com showed here. This is a big problem. It's been widely documented already that many streaming services largely dumb down their content in general because most audiences don't really engage with the content. It's not just Netflix, like I said, it's Amazon, Apple, everything. So people who work in the industry spoke to The Guardian anonymously, and as I highlighted here, Netflix, for example, actually tells creators that certain scenes or shows in general must actually be dumbed down on purpose because they're not, and I quote, second screen friendly. So the idea here is that your phone is actually the first screen you usually care about when you're watching something. The TV, laptop, whatever is usually the one you're using for Netflix or Amazon or Apple or anything else, but it needs to have content that you can listen to while not necessarily watching so that you can understand what goes on, because most people pay way too much attention to the screen in front of their face instead, right? Your phone, and The Witcher perfectly fits that description. It likely explains why the visuals of the show, like the infamous Nilfgaard armor, looked atrocious, because it doesn't matter anyways in Netflix's eyes. You're likely not even watching the show 90% of the time until Henry Cavill is back on screen anyways, so who cares, right? Well, I do. I'm sure many people did as well. We all care about our content looking good. I mean, I try to ensure my videos look good too, because YouTube is as much a visual medium as it is audio. As one creator who spoke to The Guardian said here, social media has cooked people's attention spans. And this is likely why The Witcher show looked as bad as it did, because it didn't matter to them. It's also likely why in many AAA games, you usually have a companion character that is issued to follow the hero everywhere they go, to tell them what to do with hints and the like, because not even Western games trust you enough to figure out things on your own. Everything has to be described to you. Warhammer, however, is a visual medium for the most part. It comes with the whole, building your own army shtick, I know, but yes, I know they have books, of course, too. But either way, it's important that the live action or now animated series ensure that they are not made for casual viewing, as some of these streamers would put it, but instead making it for actual viewers who care about this sort of stuff, right? Henry Cavill has made it very clear that anyone who is set to work on Warhammer 40k at this Amazon thing, they must know the lore in and out, and has to, as Henry said once, read the codex. Otherwise, what's even the point? Now, I don't claim to know everything about Warhammer, because I don't, and even I find it extremely bizarre how commonplace it is for modern adaptations to still be made by people who seemingly care little to really nothing at all about the thing that they're writing about in the first place. As Screen Rant puts it here, the only way Warhammer works as a series is if it's faithful. Otherwise, it's cooked before it even arrives. There was this meme floating around as seen here that kind of shows how things can go so poorly so quickly. World of Warcraft, if you don't know, has become a Fisher-Price land, whereas Warhammer has mostly, sort of, kept its identity outside of some modernity like female Adeptus Custodes it needs to expel, of course, but the problem is that what happened with World of Warcraft is a very real problem that can and will ruin Warhammer the same way that Netflix did with The Witcher and really everything else. It's why I have so much faith, yet trepidation, in the Henry Cavill Warhammer project. On paper, it does have the potential to be the greatest thing that we've seen in years, but it can also be the equivalent of Rings of Power, but now for Warhammer fans. I mean, it is on Amazon after all. It's not like they haven't ruined things already with other franchises. The fear with Warhammer is whether we're going to get a faithful adaptation, or if Henry Cavill will just repeat what happened with The Witcher before he inevitably leaves that too. Beau DeMayo, for example, who wrote the first season of X-Men 97, also worked a bit on the Netflix version of The Witcher, seasons 1 and 2. And he infamously said, as IGN reported here in 2022, that Beau DeMayo claimed that writers on Witcher hated the books and games openly, yet they worked there regardless. Of course, this was pushed back by Lauren Hissrich, who is the showrunner of Witcher, and claimed that people actually loved the books that wrote the show. However, the end result of what Lauren and her team at Netflix did to Henry Cavill's Geralt kind of proves Beau DeMayo's point, that they did not respect the source material at all, because if they did, the show wouldn't be ending abruptly like it will be due to waned, fan interest and the destruction of the IP, let's be real. I think what Warhammer represents in the grand scheme of things is really really a chance to reset things, to make something people actually want to become fans of again. It's been way too long since I've actually been excited to watch something and want to know what happens next. Because every show I watch at some point gets hijacked and ruined. If it's not moronic showrunners and writers ruining the things, it's then the actors themselves opening their mouths and dividing audiences into what I can only call a purity test. Take Reacher, for example, over on Amazon, Alan Ritchson, who stars in Reacher, and how he uses his platform to speak on politics, what he believes is politically correct. And he inevitably created his own version of a purity test for fans of Reacher, and it's a big reason why I dropped the show. I don't want to know your politics. Your show is not real. You are an actor, and you need to stop talking and just act and read the lines given to you. Alan Ritchson annoys me now because he refuses to stop talking about politics wherever he goes. And everywhere I look, it's the same thing. Why do I need to hear this? I don't. So after the lackluster season 2 of Reacher, I moved on. I stopped watching it and I never went back because I can't watch things knowing the people behind it are insufferable morons. Henry Cavill sits in the unique position where he is largely speaking apolitical, right? He never really speaks on politics at all. He knows whatever he thinks is going to divide people. So instead, like an old Hollywood actor, he focuses on the work in case his private life views all of it, well, private. That's how Hollywood used to be like. We didn't know what everyone thought. Then social media happened. Now we know, frankly, too much. Actors who played resourceful, intelligent characters like Alan Ritchson suddenly revealed themselves to be yes men, right? Parrot whatever will keep him employed. And don't get me started on other people like Mark Ruffalo, and this also applies to the game industry too, even Warhammer writers as well. As seen here, in case you forgot, in 2021 from bounding into comics to prove a point, a writer on Space Marine 2 caused headaches because they couldn't stop talking about defunding the police and erasing men from roles in video games. Yes, this is real. This writer's name is Ashley Cooper. As seen here, they champion the defunding of police. Unsurprisingly, all of this stemmed from the rise of modernity in 2020, but this is my point. None of this helped anyone. This is the same Warhammer writer as seen here who said in 2018 that comics don't belong to cis heteronormative white men, I guess, and that everyone should stop hiring white men and see what happens, right? Ashley Cooper is, of course, a white transgender person, and this led to another writer on Space Marine 2 who's named Oliver, as seen here, having then to run damage control for Saber in order to ensure people will still support the game. I say no joke here, Oliver likely saved Space Marine 2 because he was level-headed, and instead of villainizing the player base, he embraced them, unlike what Ashley Cooper did. And that's sort of my point. It doesn't take much for people to boycott or leave these franchises behind, and this sort of thing becomes all too commonplace everywhere in pop culture these days. And Henry Cavill, well, he would be a moron to hire someone like Cooper onto the Warhammer series, let's be real, because all you're doing then is creating unnecessary problems, right? The likes of which someone like an Alan Ritchson or Mark Ruffalo would advocate for because they're also crazy people. But the controversy nevertheless exposed something important to me, which is the relationship between an adaptation or game or show, whatever it is, and the people making it matters a lot these days. Because if you are adapting something beloved, you need people who understand why it became beloved in the first place. And you need to ensure that people hired do not actively loathe the audience that they're meant to be serving. Warhammer 40k is not sunshine and rainbows. It is literal nightmares given form, trying to enslave and erase humanity from existence on a galactic scale. The Imperium is not your typical heroic good guys. They're not the Avengers, but they are humanity's best shield against things that are arguably way worse than any political ideal or movement. But that's also what makes 40k interesting. It's the moral ambiguity, right? The absurd scale of it all too. And if you remove any of those elements for modernity, it's not Warhammer anymore. It's just generic space fiction, but it has Space Marines in it. And this is why Cavill being an executive producer is important. Not because executive producers automatically control everything, okay? They don't. And we shouldn't pretend that Henry Cavill has unlimited creative authority. He doesn't have that. Amazon is still Amazon. Games Workshop still owns the property, right? There are going to be countless people between any idea and the final product. I get that. But Henry Cavill is something that most corporate executives usually don't these days. He actually cares about the universe deeply and understands it. He didn't describe getting into make Warhammer content as, oh, I got a new job, right? No, to Henry Cavill, it was akin to like, he's been waiting for this his whole life, you know? And that's the sort of passion that Warhammer needs right now. Everything needs that. Because you cannot fake understanding 40k. You can hire consultants, you can read the lore, you can build expensive sets, you can create incredible CGI that's super expensive. But if the people making the show don't understand why fans love this universe, trust me, the audience is going to know immediately. And Amazon has to realize the potential they have here to make something even bigger than, say, Fallout or really anything else. They have the opportunity here to make the next Star Wars, and I'm not kidding. There is one lesson from The Witcher that Amazon should take seriously. Never confuse adaptation with reinvention, because there's a difference between adding something new and just replacing something instead. You can even create something designed specifically for television, but the universe itself needs to remain recognizable. Imagine watching a Warhammer series and thinking, this looks like it could be any generic science fiction show. Like, that's failure. That's The Witcher. That's Willow, Wheel of Time. It can't be generic like that. The perfect Warhammer series doesn't need to explain every piece of lore either. It shouldn't do that. That would be impossible. But instead, it should make you feel like there is an enormous universe behind what you're seeing on screen. You should watch a character walk into a cathedral and realize that that building is like huger than like most cities, right? You should see a space marine and understand that that's not just some guy in a suit of armor. That is a genetically engineered super weapon created by an empire that has been fighting for thousands of years. You should hear someone mention the Emperor and realize that isn't merely a political leader like we know it today, but that the Emperor is effectively a godlike figure whose decaying body has become the center of an entire civilization. You should see the concept of chaos and understand that humanity isn't fighting an enemy that can just be defeated with a gun or something, right? They're fighting something that exists inside the very fabric of reality. That's Warhammer. That is what Cavill needs to protect here. And this is where the story comes full circle, right? With The Witcher, Henry Cavill was an actor. He couldn't advocate for change and he had no real power. But with Warhammer, he's coming into this as an executive producer. It's a completely different beast in terms of power now, which is good. Very good even. Does that guarantee success? Of course not. But it does give this project something The Witcher eventually did lose, which is a powerful advocate inside the production who has a real personal reason to actually care about getting this thing right in the first place. And Hollywood can learn a valuable lesson here too. It's not about just buying an IP, hiring writers, and then changing everything and modernizing the story or making it, accessible. And then act surprised when nobody likes it because they can't recognize it anymore. But there needs to be a line here, and that line is real identity. Because if you remove everything that made the original special, what exactly are you adapting then? You're just using the name at that point. And perhaps the most important thing Amazon can do is simply listen, because Warhammer doesn't need to become something else to succeed. It's not Marvel or Star Wars or Netflix Witcher slop. It just needs to become Warhammer 40,000. And if Henry Cavill can make sure that happens, then the man who walked away from Geralt may finally get the adaptation he's been waiting his entire life to make. But what do you think? Let me know. Thanks for being here. Subscribe if you want to. I'll have some more experimental videos coming in the next week because I am going on a vacation. So I hope you look forward to those ones when they come out. But thank you as always, and see you guys next time.